Dear listeners, this is Liberalism or Death, Republican Institute's podcast. My name is Zoltán Ranschburg. I'm Republican Institute's senior analyst, and today we present you a special English language edition of our program on an equally special occasion. Last Sunday, Poland held parliamentary elections, and the parties of the Polish Democratic Opposition combined managed to get more votes than the governing party Law and Justice, or PiS. This means that after 8 years, major political changes are expected to take place in Warsaw, which will have an effect not only on Poland, but also on the region. Our podcast is for primarily Hungarian audience and is in Hungarian by default, but this time we decided to record the discussion in English for a good reason. It is our privilege to have Miłosz Hodun with us today to interpret the results of the Polish elections, to explain the opposition's success, and to talk about the potential consequences of last Sunday's developments both within and outside the borders of Poland. Miłosz is president of Polish think tank Projekt Polska and is the international officer of the Liberal Party Nowoczesna. Miłosz, thank you for sitting down with me. And without any further ado, let me ask you, what is your experience of the elections? What is your take on the developments of the last couple of days in Poland?
Thank you so much for having me in this podcast, and thank you for the question. So, last 2 days has changed everything because it's a huge success of the society, I think, of Polish people. First of all, I would like to stress that the turnout. 74% of Polish people went to polling stations to vote. In some cases, they had to wait for like 5 hour long lines to vote. We had situations like that in some of the biggest cities. People were super determined, and it was the highest turnout ever. There's even a joke that Peace Party brought more people to vote than the communists in 1989 when we had our first semi-democratic elections. The turnout was slightly lower than now. So the people were really angry with everything that was happening in the country and decided to vote, and they choose a change. And what's also very important is that the significant majority of the population, of the voters, voted against this illiberal regime, despite all the propaganda, despite all the billions of euros of Polish zlotys pumped into the campaign of peace from the state budget, despite of the public TV and the fact that all state agencies, ministries were working for peace, officially and unofficially. So I think it's a huge victory of democracy in Poland, huge victory of the society, of the people, and we will see in upcoming weeks the formation of the new government, which will be composed of 3 blocks represented now in the parliament with clear majority, and Poland will be back on the European and liberal track.
Thank you. And I assume that the that the probably unexpectedly high participation rate in the elections gives a very specifically big legitimacy to the government that's informing. How do you see a coalition government would be able to form a government, and how much it will be able to keep that coalition working, operating in the years to come? Because I think one thing is to get into power, but another thing is to keep it for the following years.
And I hear you're asking this question from the Hungarian perspective, which is from the
There's no other perspective from which I can speak of.
Exactly. But yeah, for the lenses of the experience that you have here, with the coalition that was maybe forced, and with partners who are not very happy with the coalition. This is my understanding of Hungarian politics. I think in Poland the situation is a bit different. So we had 3 democratic opposition parties, blocs, that competed in these elections, but they competed in a very friendly way, in terms that the last month of the campaign was under the message that we are going together to kick out this government from their position. So we were not fighting against one another, but we were going together, and we said that we will form a government. And what is more, all these coalition partners who will form the new government, we've been cooperating last 8 years in the parliament, but not only in the parliament, also in regions, and also during the protests against the government. So we know our partners, we trust our partners, and also we like our partners. So this coalition will not be forced. It's a coalition where none of the partners is entering with without a smile on our face. Like, we all believe that this is a good thing we're doing, and the partners in this government will be our real partners. So it's not a forced coalition; it's a coalition of choice. Is these three parties really want to work together and want to make the change. So I'm rather positive and optimistic about the stability of this coalition, and all these three blocs. They know, the partners know what unites them, what has to be changed, and of course there will be some tensions, there will be negotiations, but in general, I'm optimistic that this coalition will bring Poland back to where it belongs, to Europe.
That's great, and you definitely sound very optimistic about
I am
this.
optimistic. Yeah.
But let me ask you the question, which I think would arise quite naturally. What was different now from what was the situation when PiS won the elections 4 years ago?
Mhm.
What happened now that brought this coalition together in such a good faith?
I think just another 4 years with this government showed many more people that the situation is unbearable. It's impossible to prolong. I think more and more people realized what peace has done to us, and some people who did not see it 4 years ago, now they saw it very clearly. And I think also this the fact that we had three competing lists in these elections. So we had the big civic coalition, which was the center bloc, where also my party is, and that was clearly the winner on the opposition side. And also we had a bit more center right, moderate conservative option for those who would like to vote more conservative in the opposition, in a Democratic Party, and also a more progressive and leftist offer. So people could really choose. And these three blocks were actually composed of 10 or so parties. So we have three blocks that entered on the Democratic opposition side, but they're composed of many parties that have been cooperating together. So I think for the first time also we had a situation when voters could not say, there is nobody I can vote for. There is nobody who would represent my interest, because the choice was pretty big. And also we had this push at the very last stage that I said, that the coalition parties, or the parties from the Democratic opposition, were saying we are not competing against one another. We are actually cooperating. We're actually willing to win it together and rule together. So I think this was very important. So yeah, like, just long story short, I would say a good offer, good candidates, fantastic campaign, many candidates, and many in many constituencies we saw very creative campaign, and again some cooperation between parties. Plus the fact that many people just believe that this is impossible to sustain. This system is impossible to sustain. This system that made our prices higher because of one of the highest inflations in Europe. And the fact that the government was so focused on topics that or problems that they created, rather than solving real topics. The fact that they were so obsessed with private life of people, and they were more interested in regulating or banning LGBTQI people and ideology, how they call it, in the public life, rather than thinking about the quality of education. The fact that Polish women were dying in hospitals because of what they did to the abortion law, just for many people, it was way too much, and they said enough.
Let me ask this, and please don't take it in a in negative way. But when I asked you what was different this year than compared to 4 years ago, the first thing that you mentioned, and what you also got back to, was that people just had enough of the system that had been operating in Poland in the last 8 years now. Does this mean that people didn't really vote for something in the elections, but they voted against something? And if it's not true, I think it's also interesting to it will also be interesting to hear a couple of words about what your offer was in the election, what the opposition's offer was in the elections, because as you mentioned, I am speaking from the Hungarian perspective. What we saw in previous Hungarian elections was that the opposition parties were actually relying on voters voting against the Fidesz government. But it turned out again and again that the simple negative message to vote against something wasn't enough to bring voters together to support the opposition. So what was the positive message of your campaign? What was the thing that you could actually offer the voters instead of this?
I'm afraid my first answer would be yes. Polish people voted first and foremost against this government, against this madness that was happening in the country, against these people who could not represent us in Europe and on international stage. So first of all, they wanted to end this madness. So if you look at the democratic opposition and what we offered, what we promised, I think it was very very, very clear agenda. It was to repair the judicial system, so to bring back the rule of law. It was to be back in the heart of Europe, so be again one of the countries that decide about the future of the European Union, meaning also to finally accept or take the money from the recovery fund that we still have not received a single euro. So we also said that we want this money for the investments that are needed. We were campaigning also on issues of human rights, on women's rights, on minorities' rights. So there was a huge, also positive agenda, I think, and also different parties had they underlined different positions in their own party manifesto. So of course the main topic of the campaign of the left was housing, so there are different things that different parties were stressing, and I think Polish people just wanted to choose this positive agenda. They wanted to choose also just the change of the language, and also they wanted to end this hate and hatred in Polish politics. So because we promised that we will replace this hate and hatred with dialogue, with the fact that we want to talk to the other side, and we don't want to eliminate, we don't want to discriminate the voters of peace, because what peace was doing for the last 8 years was discriminate, was to persecute, was to take funds from everybody who was supporting the democratic opposition, like organizations, individuals, companies. If you were showing that you support any other ideas than peace's ideas, you were punished. So the vision of Poland that the opposition shows is that we don't want that. We would like to now do an audit and make them feel fully responsible for all the damages that they did when they were in power. But we would like to start a dialogue with their voters.
And what I wanted to ask you also was that PiS in the end got 35.9% of the votes, according to the latest numbers that I read.
That's official.
That's the final. Of course, I get my information from Hungarian news, and I see that they're in a little bit delay compared to Polish sources, which means that PiS still has quite a big support in the Polish society. And I know that today you're here as Projekt Polska's president, but not as a party politician. But I'm really curious what your message would be to that part of the society, the supporters of PiS, who might be disappointed. And they represent quite a significant part of the Polish society. What would be your message, or what is the opposition's message to them? What should they be expecting?
Yeah, I think the main message is that we are not going to do anything against you. Like that, we don't see the voters of PiS as enemies. We see them as citizens, like everybody else, and we would like them to be respected, and we would like to offer policies that will be also beneficial for them. because it's not our intention to produce only policies or implement laws that would be against them, or that would be in favor only of our own voters. This is not who we are. This is not what we do. So this is the first thing I would say. So this is really this message of dialogue and this message of future together. We're often saying in my party that Poland is not like, we have to all fit in this country. This country, this is what we have. This is the land we have, and all these people, and this must be home for us all. And even if we don't agree, we must cohabitate in the same country. And this is really our position. Like, we would like to reach to these people and tell them, this is okay really to disagree. This is okay to be conservative. This is okay to vote for other parties, including peace if you want. Just let's respect each other. So this is the first thing. The other thing is that I'm absolutely sure that in a couple of months, the number of people, the peace supporters, will shrink, mostly because they will not be exposed anymore on the governmental propaganda and state-owned media, because this is one of the first reforms that the new government will have to do. We'll have to change the state-owned TV and state-owned radio from this terrible, disgusting propaganda tube that is still now into something that we will be able to call public, independent media. Because the fact that 36% of the population voted for peace, partially of course, but the huge problem here is that there are many people who are exposed only on the peace propaganda in state-owned media. There were the people for whom the state-owned media was the only source of information, were the people whose political views and perceptions were formed by this everyday propaganda. And I could see it really when I was campaigning last weeks in smaller towns, in markets like farmers markets. People were speaking the hateful language, like exactly the same sentences they hear every day in the state-owned TV. So that was really a shocker. But people were really doing it, were just repeating what they heard every day in the state-owned TV. And I'm sure that when people are exposed to independent journalism, to normal news, to criticism towards all actors on the political stage, like constructive criticism, not only this propaganda and criticizing everybody who is on the other side and praising everybody who is in your camp, this will change. This will change a lot. The other thing is that I'm sure that we will now be observing sort of the composition of peace as a party. So yeah, I think just many of their voters will realize that reality is not what they were told in the last 8 years. It was not what the peace party was telling them in the last 8 years.
Well, I assume that to our Hungarian listeners, the importance of media ownership and the state's influence over media is not something that has to be introduced specifically. And I think this is a topic in itself that we could discuss for hours, actually, how it affects politics and people's perception of politics. Just a quick remark. I've been following the coverage of the Polish elections in Hungarian press. Independent news, of course, independent news sites write about the elections quite properly, but it's quite apparent that the Hungarian Fidesz or government-affiliated media has been in a trouble trying to frame what happened in Poland. And actually, most headlines, there are either no headlines at all, and they don't really write about them, or they write about this having got the most votes. Yeah. And they try to forget about them actually losing the elections. Yeah. So it's a very, very interesting perspective. But that aside, there is one aspect I certainly have to ask you about, and that's Ukraine. Before the Hungarian elections of 2022, it was only 2 months or 3 months before the election when the war started, when Russia invaded Ukraine. And it had a significant effect on Hungarian elections results, favoring the government. Interestingly, the governing parties were able to get the most out of this as a politicized topic. If to anyone, then it's to Poland, to whom this war means even more in the everydays than to Hungary. Like Poland has been very, very deeply involved with the events of Ukraine since the beginning of the war. How do you see the war affected the campaign And do you think that the results of the election would have would bring any difference to the new government's approach to the war in Ukraine?
If you had asked me, is there anything good that this government has done, peace government has done in the last 8 years, I would have answered their attitude towards Ukraine and Ukrainian people in the first months of the war, of the full invasion, so after February 24, 2022. They could have used that period and create hostile environment in Poland to spin their anti-migration rhetoric. They didn't. They actually used also the state apparatus to create, and state-owned media, to create a positive image of Ukrainian refugees in Poland, and I think it was important because part of their electorate who could be or who is or who was anti-Ukrainian, and historically we have people who have this anti-Ukrainian feelings and sentiment. They didn't do it, so I would say, okay, this was the only thing they did well. But then
But you're saying only in the first month.
Exactly, but then it changed, and what we see now, what we see in the last month, it was the peace tried to enter into a competition with the only clearly anti-Ukrainian party that we have in Poland, so the far-right Confederation. Far-right Confederation was growing, and some months ago they were even polling at 12. There was even, I think, a survey or two when they had 14%, because they were the only ones polling at the anti-Ukrainian on the anti-Ukrainian agenda. One of their main slogans in this campaign was "No money for Ukrainians," meaning like Ukrainian refugees. So they were trying to do that. And Peace saw that they were losing support, so they tried to enter this competition, and not in such a brutal and blunt way like Confederation, but clearly many messages that were given were about social benefits for Ukrainian, and of course all the story about Ukrainian grain. This was very much connected to the elections and to their fight for these hardliners or nationalist voters. So, and it looks like it did not work, and it did not play a big role in these elections. We see that the mobilization, the turnout was so high that the far right was actually marginalized, and they will have a very small representation in the parliament, much smaller than we expected. And it was not the most important topic, or even not one of the most important topics for the voters.
And do you think Poland's approach towards Ukraine might change in the future now?
I think it will change into a more positive one, more constructive one. Is that the new government will not be trying to play Ukraine for their own benefits. I think the new government will be anchored in like a true solidarity and true support for Ukraine, and this true belief that Ukraine is part of the European family and should be a member of the European Union. So I believe that the relations will be better compared to what we've had in what we've seen in the last weeks and last months, when the relations between Poland and Ukraine got worse and worse with every week. So yeah, I'm also positive and optimistic about it.
You mentioned the European Union, and I think that's something that we certainly have to talk about, especially, again, with me talking from a Hungarian perspective. The last several years have shown that in many cases, especially issues regarding rule of law problems in Poland and in Hungary, have brought the Hungarian and Polish government together in usually an ad hoc veto coalition against the European issues. But certainly, Poland has been one of the most reliable allies of Hungary recently. What do you think to be the effect of the Polish elections on Hungary at the European level?
Oh, wow. I mean,
I know it's a really difficult question, and it's not directly related to the elections themselves. But I think from a Hungarian perspective, it's very important to understand what Hungary can expect from a.
I don't think. I mean, Hungary and Hungarian society probably can expect good things. I really hope that this will be, this defeat peace that just happened will be inspiring for the Hungarian opposition, and it will show that this is possible. And I also hope a change will happen here. So yeah, this is about Hungary and Poland. If you ask about what Orbán can expect, I think he can expect all the worst. Like for the Polish opposition, Orbán is the symbol of the only peace ally in the region. Peace, or Jarosław Kaczyński's inspiration. Many of the dangerous ideas, political dangerous ideas that were implemented in Poland were inspired by Hungary, but Orbán's Hungary. So not about Hungary, but it's about Orbán and Fidesz. So I think Orbán will have very difficult time with the new Polish government, especially if Donald Tusk is the new prime minister, because I guess there is also a personal animosity here.
I'm quite sure about that too.
Yeah, but also I would like to stress that from a Polish perspective, the Orbán's reaction after the war in Ukraine also changed attitude of the current Polish, so peace government towards Orbán. So he is not seen as a closest friend anymore, that's for sure. So it's already a very different situation than 3 or 4 years ago. But now I think he can only expect worse and worse. So yeah, because the new government will be clearly very pro-European, will be willing to bring Poland back at the to the mainstream of the European politics, because the new government believes, the three parties, I'm sure that they believe that Poland's place is at the main table in the European Union. We are the fifth biggest nation in the EU, and we should decide about the future. We should be proposing, we should be inspiring debates, and we should be one of those who decide about the future of the EU, not those who only block and ask for money. So I think Orbán will have very difficult time in the V4 and in the EU in general now.
And I really don't want to keep you up too long, but just one last question about the forming of the new government. So what are the exact next steps? What shall we expect in the next couple of weeks and months to come? When can we expect a new government to stand up?
Now many things are in the hands of the president. So Andrzej Duda, the president nominated, when he was a candidate, he was nominated by Peace, and he's still very close to the Peace party. And we will see what he will do. Constitutionally, it's up to him to appoint the prime minister candidate and give him 2 weeks to form a government. And most probably, this is what everybody is expecting, he will give this mission to create the government to Mateusz Morawiecki or somebody else from Peace. And it's not because we think it's not that because they still believe that there is any chance that they will form the government, but it's just to give them time to prepare their departure from ministries, agencies, state-owned companies, to hide everything they believe should be hidden, to destroy all the documents that they believe should be destroyed. So it's just to buy time. So let's say the worst scenario is that the opposition will create the government only in the third step, so-called the third step, and it will be in December, around Christmas. So yeah, around Christmas time, Poland will have a new democratic government.
Well, I think you cannot wish for anything better under the Christmas tree. So on that very positive note, Miłosz, thank you very much for being with us today, and I wish you all the best in Poland. We are very curiously following the developments there, and I wouldn't be honest if I said that we don't have a little tiny bit of envy in us when we look at the political trends of Poland. So Miłosz, thank you again for being with us, and I wish you all the best, and congratulations again.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.